Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeet Shah. I'm a senior solutions engineer at Auth0, formerly was a senior solutions engineer at Yubico. Today, I want to talk to you about how we can use FIDO to really guide modern identity to build citizen trust with our digital governments. And before we get started and really talk about how FIDO can solve this problem, I want to take you on a little journey. Over the last couple of years, I've really become more digital in how I like to interact with my businesses. About 2 years ago, I actually shifted apartments. And during that process, I had to do the fun thing of changing my address on a lot of different forms. This meant my cell phone, my insurance, my credit cards, and most importantly, I had to call the DMV. So when I reached out to my credit card company, it was a simple form online. I could call them or even do it digitally. Similarly, with my cell phone, I logged into my carrier's website, just changed my billing address, and boom, they kept billing me with no problems. But when I got to the DMV, the first thing I wanted to do is go to their website to see how I could best change my address. So landed on their website. And I was happy to see they have online services, so went directly there. From there, quick link, change of address. This seems like a great process. I'm going to just jump in. And then, under the online services, they gave you a large list of things that you could do. You could do it online. You could even change it in person and need it, or mail in your forms to change it. So went through this process, decided that I was going to champion through and do it online. So went to change my address online. And, standard form, they wanted to have some information about me, do some identity verification so that I could ensure that I was the one changing my address. So I went through this process, provided my information, changed my address, and pretty simple, I did gave them my old address, my new address, signed some documents, paid the change fees, and everything was good. Created an account, and I was smooth sailing. So I was really happy. I had a great experience with the DMV online. I was able to easily change my address, create an account with my local government, and now, I was happy to be able to interact with them online. And then, a few months later, as the season started to get better, the heat cooled down and fall was upon us. I thought it'd be perfect to kind of see if I can schedule a little retreat to a park, have some friends over, and go to a little park, have a picnic, maybe carve some pumpkins. So same thing, DMV is great. So I'm sure the Department of Parks and Rec would be great as well. So went over to that website, decided to apply for a permit. And, once again, there was an apply online process. So I went ahead and clicked on that and brought me here. So I clicked log in and I was like, yes, I signed up with the DMV. I have my username and password. They already know my address and all my other information. So let's go ahead and click log in. Oh, username and password. So, went ahead and typed in my username and password, and surprise, they actually use a different system than the DMV. So they didn't have an account for me. So then again, I went ahead and said, brand new patron, let's go ahead and register for a new account. And wow, I was not expecting such a lengthy form process. Not only did I have to create a new login and password, which I know all of you hate, having multiple passwords per service. They needed a lot of information about me just so that I could register and reserve a park. They needed my full name. That's fine. They needed my address. Okay. They needed to make sure I was a DC resident, but they actually needed my date of birth. They needed my gender, my ethnicity, what language I spoke at home. A lot of questions that I was surprised that I would need just to reserve a park, especially since pretty sure the DMV has all this information already. So, I was really wanted to sign this, but, not a big deal. Not the best user experience, but I was able to accomplish my goal. And I knew, with everything going on, going in line, to solve some of my challenges and interacting with my government wasn't necessarily possible. But filling out some of these forms online wasn't a big deal for me. So I thought I would, take a chance, struggled a little bit, but I was good to go. But, really I did fairly small interactions. I didn't do anything that, had to deal with anything that impacted my life severely. But, I got to think, how do other people really interact with the government when we can't be in line anymore? And then the pandemic hit. And I know all of us were impacted by the pandemic very differently over these last 18 months. Some of us were able to quickly shift to working from home. Others had to, kind of persevere during some hybrid work experiences. Some others had to close their shops. And unfortunately, some industries were hit fairly hard. And so it was a tough time for a lot of us during that pandemic. And, this is where the governments stepped in. They were like, we are here to build trust with our citizens and take care of them during these tough times. And, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and, the executive branch, they came together and they passed a very large bill. As you may all be aware of the CARES Act, it included $260 billion for citizens that were, displaced by their jobs during this time frame. And so that they could recoup some of this money that they were losing and still be able to afford the necessities they needed to continue living, continue supporting their families, and continue paying rent. And this was, a great thing. So what happened? Everybody went online, started applying to their local government's websites so that they could actually receive some of these benefits. They went through some of these archaic identity proofing processes. They created their accounts and so forth. And everything seemed to be going pretty well. And then we were hit with a lot of fraud. There wasn't just one or two cases, but if we looked across the different states and cities, we quickly saw how poor our cybersecurity was in this space. With $260 billion available for unemployment benefits, it also raised a lot of opportunities for, malicious actors to step in and try to take some of this money. We saw, international hackers and scammers steal millions or billions of dollars from pandemic aid. In Florida, their entire site was hacked and all 57,000 accounts were leaked. And people were then able to leverage those to, steal some of these unemployment benefits. And then we saw, the federal government actually step in and issue an alert that these payments frauds are a thing, and state governments, local governments, and even the federal government now had to do things to kind of protect their citizens and allow them to actually get the money that they needed to continue living. And so, we looked at how much money was actually lost during this time. It was $36 billion was estimated loss. That's more than 10% of the money that was issued by the federal government down to the local agencies to distribute to local citizens and local families to continue to persevere during this pandemic. That is just the monetary loss. What we can't measure is the impact to these families. A lot of them lost their housing. A lot of them couldn't afford food. This was a very trying time. And this is not the first time we've seen, a poor cybersecurity infrastructure struggle when we're trying to support our citizens. This was a great opportunity to kind of show trust and allow our citizens to interact with their governments in an easy way so that we can continue moving forward during these trying times. But, that didn't really happen as we planned. So when we peel back those covers and we try to see what really caused these issues, we look at what the FBI discovered. They saw a huge spike in fraudulent unemployment insurance. And Majority of this was basic stolen identities. These are the common trends we typically see when we look at identity and authentication. And what are the problems we're trying to solve? We want to protect against breached and stolen passwords. We want to protect against bots and scripted attacks. And also, we want to ensure that when there is identity theft, that can't be replayed against sensitive accounts. We often hear, don't use the same password for your email account as well as your social media on your banking accounts or financial accounts. But, more and more often we see this as a common occurrence. So, and we saw this in real time, where hackers were able to steal credentials from one system and then replay it against sensitive systems. And then they were able to take, $36 billion, which really impacted the families and the citizens of the United States. And, we look at this and we ask ourselves, what can we do to improve this process? Is there a way to solve some of these issues? And I think everybody at this conference today, we're at the FIDO Alliance or part of the FIDO Authenticate conference. I think we all kind of know what's the best way to solve this. And we look at two parts of this, right? We talk about identity verification, and then we talk about strong authentication. So when we combine these two solutions with strong identity proofing and strong authentication, we can protect those accounts that are really protecting sensitive assets. And at the end of the day, this is protecting our citizens and also allowing them to protect their families. So let's take a look at how we can use these two technologies to really protect against these attacks. So when we look at identity proofing, I want to break it down into 4 specific categories. One of them is accessibility. One of the things we talk about a lot when we look at government to citizen services is it accessible for all? That means, can the most tech-savvy millennials be able to access these resources, but also can older generations that are also unemployed or need these benefits able to access these systems and prove who they are? So when we look at implementing identity proofing solutions, we need to be able to provide a variety of options. We need the ability to, say, scan a driver's license with your mobile device or prove your identity using government issued documents that you may have, like your W-2s or your passport that has a lot of personal information on there. By providing these different options, we can ensure that we're inclusive of all of the citizens that need access to these benefits and other government services online. The next thing we need to take into account is security, right? At the forefront, what does identity proofing do? It will help us prevent identity fraud. Just because an attacker may have captured your username and password from one service, this will not allow them to now create an account on your behalf. They need to be able to prove who they are and that they should have access to these services. So by using identity proofing, we can help eliminate some of the identity fraud we see across these systems. Third, ease of use. So earlier in this presentation, I kind of showed you the different experiences I had by registering changing my address at the DMV, or even looking to change my permit for a local park. Both of these had very lengthy registration processes where I had to show them, or I had to prove to them who I was using my address and some additional PII. But all of this information already exists in government documents issued to me. If I can now easily scan that and prove to the government that this is who I am based on these documents I was issued, we can really make this process easy. And this will now allow governments to interact with citizens faster and more efficiently. And fourth, we can eliminate help desk costs. A lot of citizens struggle going through these forms and going through these processes. And if we're able to empower citizens to register themselves, they're able to leverage the tools they have in their hand, to let it be a webcam, a mobile phone, or their laptop to register using identity proofing, we can eliminate that burden just to get online and access these government systems. Now, let's look at the next part of this picture. Once you prove who you are, how do we protect the account that you have to access those resources? Because a lot of these benefits, they came out on a regular cadence. It wasn't a one-time payment that covered the entire pandemic. You may have had to log in on a monthly basis to make sure that you were getting the benefits that you were entitled to. And so this comes into the second part of the attacks, which were breached passwords and bot attacks. So using strong authentication with FIDO, we can now enable users to protect themselves from a lot of these attacks. And again, sticking on those four themes of accessibility, security, ease of use, and help desk costs, let's look at how FIDO kind of ties into this. So looking at accessibility, being in the FIDO space for a couple of years now, one thing that has always been a concern with FIDO has been mass adoption. There's been times where it was only restricted to a specific browser or specific devices. But the nice thing is, over the last 3 years, the FIDO protocol has really matured, and it's now available on all major operating systems and devices. This means it doesn't matter if you're leveraging a Windows machine, an Apple machine, or a Google machine, you're able to leverage FIDO to protect your accounts and gain access into them. Security is the underlying benefit of FIDO. We talk about all of the other pros and cons, but at the end of the day, it prevents credential stuffing attacks by using strong private and public key cryptography. Now, if we can enable our end users to leverage this as a multi-factor authentication tool, we can allow them to protect themselves from these attacks. Now, when we look at ease of use, this is the next benefit of FIDO that is introduced. One of the major reasons to move away from passwords is to get away from the complex 15-character passwords that users were used to memorizing. Additionally, we no longer have to worry about scrambling for your mobile device and having to type in a one-time password just so that you can now present it to your check-in or login process as well. With FIDO, they have biometrics, they have security keys. They really allow you to easily secure your account with just a single gesture. Now all of our devices have cameras and also have fingerprint scanners that make this process very seamless and easy. Users can just type in their username, scan their finger, and log in. And then lastly, the benefit and the ROI with FIDO is very direct. We can immediately minimize help desk costs. Forrester estimates every password reset costs nearly $70. So if everybody that was impacted by the pandemic and needed to apply for unemployment benefits, if they called the help desk to change their password that they may have registered a year or even a month prior, they were now costing the government an additional $70. That $70 of benefits could also be applied to the citizens, granting them, more benefit through this process. So, there's two ways to kind of look at that expense. And, at the end of the day, leveraging FIDO, we can try to eliminate that and improve the citizen experience accessing these government services. So let's kind of look at what this registration process may look like for an end user. They may go directly to your benefits website. They would type in their email address, their username, password. They would click continue. They may provide some additional attributes about themselves to sign up. And then they would simply have to verify who they are. This is just an example of an individual, scanning their mobile driver's license or scanning their driver's license with their mobile device, which then captures all of their important attributes, their email address, their mailing address, their date of birth, and their driver's license number. And then all of this can then prove who they are and allow them to securely log into this application. And similarly, we can just have that user instantaneously register with their FIDO device. And now the next time a user has to access your services, all they would do is type in their email address, click continue, and then your device or your application can quickly register or verify their face or their biometric and allow them to get access to their benefits. So, at the end of the day, we look at why would we want to introduce FIDO? And there's 4 or 5 main benefits. A, we're going to promote equitable access. We look at all the broad range of citizens that were impacted by the pandemic. There wasn't a specific group of citizens. There wasn't a specific geography of citizens. This was something that impacted not only the local government, the state government, but all of the citizens of the United States. And so we want to ensure that we provide technologies that are accessible by all, and so that we can promote this equitable access to these services. Next, we really want to eliminate the fraudulent transactions. And we all know what the biggest challenge with online services today is, and that's going to be their weak passwords. So if we can eliminate the reliance on passwords, we can easily eliminate those fraudulent transactions. Next, it's balancing that security and experience, by having users easily log in with the device credentials they have. So taking advantage of Touch ID, Face ID, or Windows Hello, or even leveraging a security key, all they need to do is simply tap their finger, scan their face, or insert a key to gain access into these resources. And this really, balances experience where it's seamless for the user, but also provides them with a lot of security. They don't need to understand how we're protecting their credentials, their benefits, and their access. All they need to know is that they can trust their government to choose the right multi-factor authentication option that will solve their challenges. Another benefit out of this is minimizing those costs for the government. There's limited budgets, there's constraints on resources. And so if we can take advantage of the best technologies out there, we can not only benefit our citizens, but we can also benefit the employees and the overall budget. And then lastly, we want to help gain citizen trust. Citizen trust has been at an all-time low over the last couple of years. There was a recent report from McKinsey where they've shown how it's slowly gone down over the last decade, and the pandemic did nothing but accelerate that loss of trust. And part of this is how citizens interact with their government. So if we can provide them with more options, let that be inline for certain citizens, but also online for others, enables them to build trust with their citizens. And at the end of the day, our democracy stands on citizen trust. The more citizens we have engaged in our democracy, the better and more efficient the government is. And it allows our government to also provide the right services back to our citizens. Thank you very much for my talk today. Let's get together and improve citizen access together. If you have questions or want to talk more, you can always reach out to me via email at jeet.shah@auth0.com. Reach out to my LinkedIn, which is listed here, but I've also included this new QR code that LinkedIn has, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at rfjeet. So thank you very much. And if you're at the conference, please stop by the Auth0 booth. We're more than happy to talk to you. Thank you.